morning. Emad Aysha, SF researcher and author from Cairo, Egypt. Finally, I'm going to talk a bit about Dune Part 2, which I really like. But typically for me, I'll begin with the bad stuff, so I can get it out of the way and then get to the good stuff. And hopefully explain why the good stuff is there. Things I didn't like, things that were problematic. I wouldn't say they mortally wounded it, but they caused a lot of problems. The usual world-building errors concerning lasers and shields. You have the Fremen using lasers very effectively against the spice harvesters of the Harkonnens, and in cool imagery, to be perfectly fair. But the Harkonnens, for some reason, can't do anything in response, while as in the first movie, they can do something in response. You have the Fremen firing lasers at the Harkonnens, and the Harkonnens fire volleys of missiles back at them and pulverize them. That doesn't seem to happen here for some reason. And then to add insult to injury, you have the scene where Feyd-Rautha takes over, pushes Rabban out of the way, and pelts Sietch Tabar with massive volleys of missiles. And it works, and it defeats the Fremen, or at least hurts them, cripples them. And you have the Baron Harkonnen saying, "Who could believe it? Old-fashioned artillery working." Now, where does that line come from, essentially? It comes from the original novel. Why? Because Rabban kept begging his uncle to give him laser cannons to zap the Fremen in their cave hideouts. And he refused because he said, "This is archaic weaponry. We're in the era of swords." And that makes perfect sense from the point of view of the Baron Harkonnen as an aristocrat, a guy who's obsessed with etiquette and fashion, and doesn't actually have to work for a living, get his hands dirty and make rational life or death decisions in the field. Gets other people to do his dirty work for him. And Rabban, again, to his considerable credit, is actually quite a rational guy. He may be the beast, but he actually knows what he's doing, and he knows what's happening out there in the field. And he doesn't give him those lasers in the novel. And this is when they were winning, and they'd already conquered Arrakis and defeated the Atreides and defeated the Fremen. He just wanted to finish them off. Here, all of a sudden, they go and blast the things to smithereens, and for some reason the Fremen don't reply with lasers. So that's a huge inconsistency, world-building inconsistency, that's bedazzling or bedeviling the new movie, as great as the new movie is. And the question is, why did that happen? If you look at the David Lynch movie, you have one or two shield fighting scenes, and everything else is lasers and those sound weapons. And David Lynch made a very wise decision that, sort of the weirding way, and martial arts just wouldn't work visually on screen, and these tiny little knives they use as swords. He did it the old-fashioned way with ray guns and that kind of thing, but with a twist. And a twist that was consistent with the world of Dune as he presented it in the movie, because in a world of noble houses at war with each other, and also jockeying for influence to take the emperorship, it would make sense that they would invest in military technology. This is like the world of ancient Greece, which was divided into city-states fighting each other, or the Romans, who were in constant military footing, war footing, and getting gladiators to fight against their soldiers, so that soldiers would learn different fighting techniques. And the gladiators were from all over the world, all over the Roman world, and maybe even beyond. And also the Romans tested out their technology and tactics on gladiators, actually used them as guinea pigs. That's the kind of world of the Dune novel. So in some ways, David Lynch understood the novel a bit better than the author. So like I said, I'm perfectly okay with modifications as long as they work and they're intelligent and well thought out and implemented consistently. You don't get that in the Dune Part 1, Part 2. As good as Part 2 is. Another thing I didn't like, plot holes and inconsistencies. It's more than that. It's not just plot holes and plot armor. It's setup and payoff, emotional payoff. The more invested you are in a character, good or bad, the more the payoff when the good guy kills the bad guy, or the bad guy gets killed, or whatever. Now, Alia is is the person who kills Baron Harkonnen in the novel and in the David Lynch movie. Here, Paul kills the Baron, and he just stabs him through the neck. Saying, "You're going to die like an animal," and throws him in the desert. It's okay, but it doesn't have much effect, and it's kind of predictable and cliched. Alia killing him in the novel and the David Lynch movie is so much more satisfying. Why? Two reasons. One, she's a child who kills this guy who preys on children. Pervert even does it with Feyd-Rautha in the novel, I think. And he's just a horrible, horrible man. So a child taking vengeance for children, that's just tremendous satisfaction. The other thing is that she kills him with poison using the Gom Jabbar. And remember, the Gom Jabbar only kills animals. So what does that tell you about the Baron? And Alia of the Knife in the novel is a nasty character. It's not just that she's a reverend mother in a tiny little body. They call her Alia of the Knife because she kills the wounded Sardaukar, slits their throats with a crysknife. And the Sardaukar, they take their skin off, they pull it off and use it to make drums. So it's quite nasty, grisly, and she's at the center of all that. I'm pretty sure they're going to compensate when the third movie comes out. They got Anne Taylor-Joy, and she's really good at these sinister, macabre roles. Are also sympathetic at the same time. She was in Morgan and in Furiosa, did a great job, all things considered. So that's another big plot hole, world-building hole, inconsistency. Also, the overemphasis on the Bene Gesserit, no mentats at all in the second. Spacing Guild, just glorified bus conductors, apparently. They create another world-building plot inconsistency with telepathy. In the novels, repeatedly, the Bene Gesserit are accused of being telepaths. And you can see that in the David Lynch movie, that's an inconsistency there. But they aren't, they just read body language, and they say so. Here you have Jessica communicating with the baby, and you have Jessica and Helen Moheim communicating also telepathically, which doesn't make any sense. They're not capable of that kind of thing, either way. That's another problem. But I mean, you can see that these are actually quite minor. Feyd-Rautha taking the place of Rabban, and you never heard of Feyd-Rautha in the first movie, not that I can remember, not even in passing. And it's hard to believe that he can beat somebody the size of Rabban, Dave Bautista. And Dave Bautista gets panned a lot in this movie, and inexcusably. He's a cool guy. He's a good actor. He's like practically the only actor, or one of the few actors in Blade Runner 2049 who actually acted with a lot of passion. You really feel sorry for him when he got killed in the beginning, and he's probably the most human person in the whole movie, even compared to the humans. Well, he isn't wooden like Ryan Gosling's character, as directed by the director, of course. You don't have all these endless profound revelatory moments on the inside and not on the outside. Anyway, leave that aside. So those are the things I don't like. I did like the battle sequence at the end, and I did like the worm riding scene where Paul learns how to ride. But I still kind of like the ones in the original David Lynch movie more. I'll explain why in the case of the word writing scene. I mean, again, it's emotional investment. It's not so much technology and special effects. Even though there's plenty of excitement and spectacle, and it's really good. They did a very good job in the second movie. The trick with the first movie, again, is understanding that it's emotional investment. That this is an epic drama, story of tragedy and triumph, and you're so engrossed in the characters and in individual scenes. And one of the things that really makes that work is the music by Toto. I saw a Toto video on YouTube some time ago, modern recording of theirs live doing the Desert Tune, and it was magical. You still felt like you were a kid watching Dune for the first time when it came to the music. I didn't like the movie at the time, but I loved the music. And David Lynch is very good when it comes to sound, the audio aspect of his movies. Blue Velvet speaks for itself. Now, in the scene where Paul is riding the worm for the first time, the biggest of their worms, and it's done really nicely. Even the way it's filmed, the thing is coming towards you. There's a storm or a strong wind pushing the dust away, so it creates this sense of momentum and something heavy and sluggish and formidable. A lot of force coming towards you, and it creates this enigmatic feel. And that's something you can do with practical effects. When you have CGI effects applied to a desert that's actually there, you get this inconsistency between the CGI part and the rest of the desert. If you watch Deep Blue Sea, the first time you see the sharks, the big shark in particular, pushing up the water, you can tell that that CGI and the rest of the water is normal. You have a little of that in the new movies. That's not the fault of the director anyway, that's just the era we're in. People have lost a lot of their practical effects skills and model building skills. Just look at the puppet of Yoda in Phantom Menace, how terrible it was, and they had to change it with the CGI thing. Compared to the original movies, which was brilliant. So lifelike, and still is, when you watch The Empire Strikes Back again. But again, the music is what really makes the difference. It makes this enigmatic moment to get the payoff. You have the Dune tune from Toto, but it's done with military drums, so it gives this wonderfully militaristic feel to it, a sense of challenge. And this is a make or break moment, and then it turns into a rock and roll beat and this sense of elation. The new movie is focusing more on special effects and spectacle. It is filmed very nicely, I don't deny that, and it is impressive. But still, it's not just nostalgia. I like the practical effects version more, and the music investment set up payoff more. And it shows you again that the original director is very intelligent. If he'd only been given the money and the time he needed, and been in charge of the final edit. So, okay, that's enough about the bad stuff. Let's talk about the good stuff. The whole sequence with Fade Rautha, the gladiatorial contest, and the black and white infrared photography, I've heard, that's great, that's impressive, and it creates this sense of a formidable opponent, and again it psychs you up. And they found an intelligent way to deflate that straight afterwards when Countess Fenrig uses voice on him, the French actress Leosio, who's a very good actress. She's still better in French, and more seductive, but she's great here. She's finally getting the attention and respect she deserves in English language cinema. The dynamics of that whole sequence on Gidi Prime are very good, though I still think that they were imitating David Lynch. Not so much Dune, but the Elephant Man. The dream sequences there, the very surrealist feel, and it's in black and white, which adds to it, adds to the impactfulness of it. But it's a great sequence. I loved the energy of the movie, the pacing of the movie. You never felt there was a dull moment. They were always doing something. It had some sort of mission, and thinking through the consequences of it for the rest of the story. The people trying to push history forward and be proactive and be their own agents. The music lit up the scenes and brought them to life. A sense of action and momentum and emotional investment, to be fair. Not as much as the original one, but they did a really good job in part 2. And Hans Zimmer's a great guy. He fumbles the ball occasionally, but I'd say that's the director's fault, not his fault. Let's see what else is there. The acting is much better. Even the people left over from the first movie act better in the second movie. Josh Brolin, in particular. In the first movie, he's like a football jock or a baseball coach dealing with a tempestuous, moody, hormonal teenager. You fight when you're expected to fight. You don't know what the Harkonnens are like. They're brutal. Why don't you show me how brutal they are? Instead of telling me. And that's the worst that he could come up with to describe the Harkonnens. They're brutal. It's a brutal world. Everybody's brutal. You can't drink a cup of water without their checking to see if there's poison in it. Show me their cruelty. David Lynch movie, Gidi Prime, one of the best sequences in the movie, and I liked even as a kid. You have industrial waste and fumes and a sense of metallic harshness. You have the servants whose eyes and ears have been surgically removed. See no evil, hear no evil. Old Roman practice of having servants were mute or deaf, so they couldn't report with them. And that's also true in Egyptian history, the Mamluks. You have heart plugs, visceral thing, you pull the thing, you bleed to death. It's horrible, and all sorts of stuff. Meaning they show you their cruelty. And Raban squeezing that thing, organism, so you can drink these juices, and industrial waste throwing things. It's just great, and again, shows you without saying a single word. Here they have to tell you that they're evil, and when they show you their evil world, it's like looking at a museum at nighttime, with the lights turned off. Nice architecture, big architecture, and it's black, but that's about it. And it's black because it's nighttime, the lights are turned off. Show me the blackness in the daytime, so I can see the cruelty in skulls or whatever. Anyway, but leave that aside. Josh Brolin is really good here. He's beaten down. He's in character. He can do his Shakespearean flourishes properly. He didn't do that in the first movie. I mean, compare him to Patrick Stewart. The guy's a Shakespearean actor, born and bred. Moods are for cows and love play, not fighting. Guard yourself a trooper. Proper British actor, slightly Yorkshire accent, compared to Josh Brolin, all-American guy trying to do Shakespearean quotes. But he does it in the second movie. He's much more in character. Jessica is better in the second movie. She's more consistent. I like Francesca Annis. She's more regal and aristocratic, and I suppose closer to the Jessica in the novel. But to be fair, Rebecca Ferguson's very sinister and scary here. She has this wolf-like snout. Her and also the Countess Fenwick. Very good casting at that part. Paul acts much better here. It's more enigmatic and passionate and charismatic, within limitations, of course. It is Timothée Chalamet, after all. Chani's better here. Stilgar's much better here, and I've talked about him before. The Harkonnens, I mean, apart from Fade Ruther, are less impressive than in the first movie. That's, well, it's a shame. Anyway, and Anne Taylor-Joy is good. You only see her in like one scene. A dream sequence, a vision sequence. Anything else, you actor-wise? Irulan I was impressed by. When I heard that they were going to get Florence Pugh, I said, this is not Virginia Madsen. She's not the storybook princess. Virginia Madsen's a story, and she's like Irulan in the novel. But here you have a very proactive character with a lot of weight and a lot of depth, and you're impressed. And she's a good-looking girl. And has a modern beauty to her, actually. So it fits the presentation of the character. Christopher Walken, not exactly my idea of the Emperor, or any Emperor. He's too blue-collar and smarmy. He's too Christopher Walken. But with all of that, he brought a dignity to the role. You could sense that he was, esteemed old man who presided over everything and had seen everything, so to speak, in his life. And it's his wise bringing Christopher Walken older and wiser now compared to what he was like when he was in the Dead Zone and Communion and those kind of things. A bit too sarcastic there. Anyway, I'm being mean here. Yeah, his performance is like his performance in Suicide Kings, which is a really good performance and a very interesting movie. Again, a blue-collar gangster kind of guy, but nonetheless classy and sassy in his own way. Kind of a gentleman. Okay, that's the good stuff. I mean, the whole the movie is put together very well in the second one. There's never a dull moment. There's constant sense of energy and momentum. Some scenes are a bit long. Music adds tremendously to it and speeds things up. You have wonderful setups and payoffs, contrasts of characters and sense of forcefulness and then being deflated, etc. These kind of things. Austin Butler, sorry, I forgot to mention him. I didn't see his Elvis movie. I haven't seen any of his movies, but everybody says he's great, and he's certainly sinister here. A guy who enjoys being sinister, enjoys presenting himself as sinister, being sinister. So he's cool. So, really good movie. Now, third aspect of the video: why is it a good movie? I'd say 3 reasons. I mean, they learned from the previous mistakes of the previous movie. The plot, while the script, while not perfect, is much more consistent than the previous one. Also, you feel that Denis Villeneuve learned to tame his ego. He's not constantly trying to outdo the David Lynch movie and do things in a different way than the David Lynch movie, even if they're at variance with the novel and even if they're inconsistent with themselves. You can tell he's quoting from the David Lynch movie. Long live the fighters, is she a pet? He who can destroy a thing, can control a thing. These wonderful enigmatic moments, character revealing moments from the original movie. So he's finally made peace with the old movie and learned to take the best of it instead of trying to outdo it or I don't say piss all over it, that would be mean, but yeah, actually, yeah, piss all over it. Look at Total Recall, the remake, compared to the original. You have the scene with the prostitute with, the three, and it's rude. This is surgically not mutants. You're doing your thing set on Earth. You don't need to make a reference to the original movie. And there's also somebody had a dream and recall about being the Prince of Mars or the King of Mars or so. I'd love to. If you've decided to do your own vision of Total Recall set on Earth with kind of retrofuturism, steampunk sort of British Empire type imagery, which is actually nice. I like the opium den scene and all these, and the world building isn't half bad. You don't need to go and poke fun at the original movie. And the original movie did that face disguise scene so much better with practical effects. Face mask opening, it's just so cool. Here it's a CGI thing, a holographic projection. It's kind of lame. I did like the mobile phone in the hand, though. That was quite good. So it's disrespectful of the previous movie, and that happens a lot. Lots of directors do that. Not all of them, thank heavens. John Carpenter did a better The Thing and closer to the story than the black and white movie, but he loved the black and white movie, and there's references to it there. The scene where the guy's on fire and he smashes through the walls. That's taken essentially. You can tell that's taken from the old black and white movie. So he's being very respectful while doing his own thing at the same time. There's no inconsistency between the two. Peter Jackson, King Kong. The black and white movie is still a classic to this day. There's some things they weren't able to do, but he was doing what they did on a bigger scale, 3 dinosaurs instead of 1 dinosaur. But the final fight between the T-Rex and the King Kong is done properly, down to the ape hitting the thing or beating his fist in the ground or whatever it is after the fight. That's in the original movie. Very studied, accurate to Gorillas type movie. So Denis Villeneuve finally learned to think of the movie and what works for the movie and respect the readership of the original novel and stop trying to be original and failing to be original too. Here they were so original in the new movie that they invented a character off the bat. The actress, who's I think French-Tunisian actress, playing Chinese friend, and a very likable character, and you really felt sorry for her for when she got killed, and you could tell what it meant. This was a turning point, a juncture in the storyline, where you could tell things are going to slip out of control now, because the Harkonnens, in their infant stupidity, killed off the northern Fremen, who are actually the reasonable guys, people you can negotiate with, not like the southern Fremen. Another positive aspect of the movie compared to the first part 2 compared to part 1 is the politics. The politics of the movies is contemporary politics, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with contemporizing a classic work. You want to keep the classic work alive and relevant. That makes perfect sense. But in the first one, they did it in a very offensive way. That scene where the Baron is in this bathtub made of chocolate pudding or something like that, or treacle. And that's supposed to be him recovering after the gas attack, or the poison tooth gas. But you can tell it's a reference to oil politics, and we can't overproduce the stuff. The prices will collapse, slow down production, hoard the goods. But again, it's done in an offensive way, as if the Arabs have any control over the oil supply, which they don't. Briefly in the heyday of OPEC, but they don't anymore. The second movie, you have the northern Fremen and the southern Fremen. The southern Fremen are fanatics, but they have a reason to be fanatics, the harshness of their terrain. And the northerners, who are the nice guys, get pummeled by the Harkonnens and their infinite stupidity, not knowing who the hell they're dealing with. And if you thought the northern guys are bad, you have no idea what the southern guys are like. And this whole unleashed holy war on the galaxy, that's the work of the Harkonnens and the Emperor, and his short-sightedness. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the bad plotting in the part 2, which is how Paul communicates to the Emperor that he's alive and gets him to come to Arrakis. That doesn't make any sense. You're falling into a trap and you can see it. And I'm pretty sure the Emperor, even if he doesn't have mentats to tell him that, can figure that out by himself. In the original, the David Lynch movie and the novel, they just create a crisis of spice production by pummeling the Harkonnens, forcing the Emperor to bring his forces and fall into a trap. And of course, Paul has prescience after taking the Water of Life, so he can tell what's going to happen. He can tell that plan is going to work. But of course, none of that happens here. For some reason, he takes the Water of Life, but it doesn't give him that particular future vision for some reason. That's one lingering mistake. But like I said, overall, it's a very good movie. The only things that are problematic from it are things left over from the first movie. And again, I'd say there's 3 factors that messed up the part 1 movie: the ego of the director, studio interference, and the cliches and corny young adult style teenage flick horror flick style. It's like watching I Was a Teenage Werewolf, but that kind of vibe to it. And I like the Michael J. Fox version, incidentally. That's a classic. And the third thing, again, is Brian Herbert, and I would say that he's had a debilitating effect on it. Looking back on it, I was engaged in a debate over Facebook about this annoying quote where the Reverend Mother tells Paul, we're going to see if you can do what your father and forefathers have failed to do, which is to rule yourself effectively, and to rule effectively by controlling yourself, which is gibberish. That's not in the novel, and the Atreides are the epitome of discipline and restraint and honor. How else could they have ruled Caladan for hundreds of years? How else could they have survived with endless conflicts with the Harkonnens, their dreaded enemies? And how else could the Duke Leto have become a threat to the Emperor? It's his reputation, the reputation of his family, that gives him such credibility in the Landstrat and makes him a potential candidate for the emperorship. So that's just completely uncalled for, and it's downright stupid and inconsistent with the movie, inconsistent with the story as they put it. And if you think the Atreides somehow can't rule themselves and their desires, what the hell would you say about the Harkonnens? Oh yeah, and one more problem in Dune Part 2 related to this is this whole thing about the Reverend Mother confessing that they were planning to kill off the Atreides because they were genetically unruly. No, they weren't. Why did they originally want to do a royal wedding between the Harkonnens and the Atreides so they could combine the bloodlines and get the Kwisatz Haderach? And that's why they're trying to do that, essentially through the back door via the Contessa Fenric, Lady Fenric, using voiceover. And also the whole thing about Jessica being a Harkonnen. And in the novel, the Baron doesn't know that he has a daughter. They used voice on him, just like they did with Fade Rautha. But here it falls flat because you created this huge plot and world-building inconsistency. And I think, again, that Brian Herbert, his prequel novels are disgraceful. They're full of emasculation of men, sexual humiliation of men, and not just the bad guys like Piter de Vries or the Baron Harkonnen, even the good guys like Duke Leto. And it's completely inconsistent, and it's completely phony. And I can prove it to you that it's phony. In one of the prequel novels, you have the Tililiexu, Beni Tililiexu, conquering and taking over. I forgot their name. Taking over a rival planet, a rival household, and the Bene Gesserit sneak in a female operative, and they finally capture her and use her to make chemicals, to make synthetic spice. And the guy who's extracting the chemicals from her, it's being described in a sexually lurid way, like sucking from a teat or something like that, being fed by a woman. and the Bene Gesserit send another woman to save her life, or at least end her misery. And the other woman successfully kills off the poor woman who's been trapped in the Axolotl tanks thing. And what happens when she's about to have a fight with the Sardaukar? She's penetrated deep into the experimental laboratory, and you're really looking forward to this big cataclysmic confrontation between a Bene Gesserit and Sardaukar, and to see who's going to win and how many she can kill. And she's saying, I can kill so-and-so with a single blow. That's true, they can do that. They can make their bodies into weapons because they have that kind of level of control of them. Control over their bodies. I think she gets zapped by an electromagnetic pulse weapon from behind her, and she ends up taking the place of the poor Bene Gesserit. So when it's convenient to the plot to sexually humiliate men, you have the Bene Gesserit constantly being domineering and using voice on the Baron Harkonnen, and then infecting his body to make him fat and ugly, which is not what's in the original novel. You have Piter de Vries getting killed by Gaius Helen Moheim. You have the Emperor being made sterile by his Bene Gesserit wife, which is ridiculous because this is the Emperor. He has the best medical attention in the world, and he has constant checkups. I think they would have noticed if he'd become sterile or not, and he wouldn't have kept on marrying or trying to have concubines to have a boy. And you have a scene where this statue of the Emperor is desecrated. Somebody puts genitals on it, but they're so small nobody can notice. It's funny, I have to admit, that scene. But again, they're constantly trashing the Emperor just because he's a man, and usually the Bene Gesserits are the ones having the last laugh. But when you need to sexually exploit or humiliate a woman, it doesn't matter that it's a Bene Gesserit. They can go and do that. So it shows you it's kind of this phony diversity quota, which I think, and it's not even. I talked about tokenism, and I don't think feminists have anything to do with this. I think this is Brian Herbert. He's the one who's doing this to try to contemporize his novels and maximize their popularity. And him working as an advisor on the new movie infected it with this damn species of pandering, and it's phony pandering. Like I said, they don't have any problem at all sexually exploiting or dominating women in their stories, if need be. So the Dune Part 2 is a mixed bag, but overall the good stuff outweighs the bad stuff and outweighs it a lot. It carries you along with it. Now, I know I've trashed cliches, but cliches can actually work if they're sincere. Dune Part 1, the scene I did in fact like, is where the Duke is telling Paul, all you need to be is my son. I wanted to be a pilot myself, and leadership is a calling. That's not true to the novel, true to the world of the novel, aristocratic world, but nonetheless, Oscar Isaac's performance just wins you over. It's the sincerity of the moment just wins you over. Art is not really logical. It's not really evidence-based and logically consistent-based. If you watch Station 11, great TV series, I haven't read the novel, every episode contradicts the episode before it and the opposite after it. And in some cases completely eliminates an episode before it. Deflates it, destroys it, pretends as if it didn't happen. And it's frustrating as hell, but with all of that, these incredible performances and great casting, particularly by Mackenzie Davis, I loved her character. I love her in general. It just wins you over. Incredible performances, very good directing in individual scenes, and just how heartwarming and heartfelt and sincere the performances are, even though the characters aren't consistent between one episode and the next. It's art, it's not science. You should try to be logically consistent as much as humanly possible when it comes to world building and plot, but ultimately it's the sincerity of your vision and the execution through the actors and the dialogue and the music that wins you over. Wins over the audience. Temporary suspension of disbelief and dream logic and that kind of thing. So I can forgive cliches, and I can forgive even plot errors and world-building errors if you feel that you're on a journey with these people into the unknown, a journey of exploration, and a journey of tragedy and triumph. And you did get a lot of that in Dune Part 2. So I can forgive a lot of the mistakes that are in Dune Part 1. Part 2, and they're mostly because of Dune Part 1. And Brian Herbert. And Denis Villeneuve's ego. But that's enough. I think I'm going to stop reviewing ranting Dune. I think I've said everything that needs to be said. I'll go and pick on something else from now on. So, Emad, over and out.